Hey everybody, this is Beth Wilson, the Pulaski County Horticulture Agent. Today I'm going to do hopefully a very short presentation on seed starting. If you're a beginner, this will really help you. If you're more experienced, it may not help you as much, but we're going to try to get through this as best we can in as short a period of time as possible. So let's talk about the things you're going to need to get ready. You're going to have some place to grow these little seedlings. The day and night time considerations probably aren't going to be a big deal if you're growing these inside your house, because your house is going to be around 65 to 70. Things are going to grow fine in that type of temperature. And we do like to keep things kind of the same day and night. So, don't put your seedlings in a room that you're going to close off or something like that. Just makes common sense. It's going to get a little messy. Yes. Airflow. Yeah, you want good airflow, but you certainly don't want to put these seedlings near a doorway where the cold air is going to rush in. So just keep that in mind. You got to have a place to put your media and a place to plant your seed. So there's many different options out there as far as your trays, your pots, those kind of things. You can use just those green solid trays if you like. They do need to have drainage in them. The peat pots and those type of things are kind of handy, or even plastic. They're cheap and they work. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the main thing is you want to make sure they do have some drainage in them. And the Jiffy pellets at the top left there, I'm not a big fan of, but they're out there. You can get those bigger cell sizes. Any plant you're going to grow for, 6 to 12 weeks, you probably want the bigger cell size. Those little small ones might be really good for a cucumber plant or something like that that's only going to be in there for maybe 3 weeks. But you need some root volume. So I would encourage you to get the bigger Jiffy, those little peat pellets. The top right there shows just some various plants growing in just newspaper containers, which is great too. And anything like the peat pots or those cow pots that's pictured there, that's going to have less root disturbance when you finally go outside. And some plants really hate to have their roots disturbed, but most plants can take it quite a bit. So let's talk about the containers a little bit more. I was a big advocate early on when I ate a bunch of yogurt, just to use yogurt cups. But milk cartons, butter tubs, anything that will hold media will work. I like the peat pots, but do understand they are going to dry out a whole lot faster than something like that yogurt cup that's pictured. A lot of people like to use the egg cartons, but egg shells and egg cartons, but I feel like they dry out too fast and you just have such a little rooting volume. It's not worth it in my mind. I'd rather compost those or use them in my worm bin or something like that rather than try to grow seedlings in there. So if you're reusing trays, it's probably a good idea to have a 9-to-1 water to bleach solution to kind of make sure there's no little microbes in there that can spoil your good time growing these plants. If you're going to use trays, a lot of times this is handy because you can get 1 to 2 seeds per cell. That seems to work well for a lot of people. And when you use these cell trays, you can just put quite a bit of plants in a small area. And so when you're growing these things inside, you don't have maybe you don't have but 1 or 2 lights. I mean, you want to be able to put a large amount in a single area. So that's the reason why we tend to go with these single cell type trays. The domes that come with some of these trays that you purchase is for a reason. The main thing is it's going to keep it nice and humid in there. It's also going that in turn that's going to allow when you water it to stay moist. When you put the seed into the media and you water it in, your job is to keep that moist until that seedling emerges. So anything that's going to help you, say you're gone to work all day, water it in the morning, put the dome on. The other thing you can use is just plastic wrap over the top. I've been known to do that. So just keep that in mind. You do not want these things to dry out, because if they do dry out, there's a chance that the seed could die. Let's talk about the mix that you're gonna choose. Seed starting mix is what you want. And the reason being is because, number one, it's sterile. Somebody has sterilized that when they made it. If you use potting mix, it just tends to have bigger pore spaces, which is good if you're going to grow plants in a container. But those may dry out a little bit faster, so your watering and that moisture when the seed's starting to germinate is more critical. Let's keep going here. The top, as you can see, is worm castings, and the bottom is the seed starting mix. If you do have a worm bin, to me, this is the best use of those worm castings, is to use them as a seedling mix. It is going to be a very, very nice medium for that seed to germinate in. If you just throw your castings out into the garden, to me, you're just kind of losing, you're not using it to its full capacity. So I like to use the worm castings if I have them, but if I don't have them, I definitely use a seed starting mix. So the medium, we want it to have, it's usually going to be a peat-based medium. It's going to have vermiculite in it. Sometimes they'll have a little nutrient charge, and sometimes they'll have wetting agents, because peat is very hard to wet up. And when you plant the seed, you want the seed to contact that medium, and this mix tends to do the best job. And if you're going to grow a lot of seeds, don't waste your money on the small bags. I'm not advocating to go to southern states, but go get you a 3 cubic foot bag of vegetable mix. It's going to work exactly the same. And as you can see in the picture, they are exactly the same mix, pretty much. There may be just very, very slight differences, but they're basically the same. Before you plant your seeds in a mix, you want to be sure that you moisten that mix first. Believe you me, it's gonna work. It works very well. The mixes can be very dusty, so if you moisten it and not over moisten, but just moisten it enough, it's going to be much easier to work with and make little rows and all that kind of thing. Warm water, better, I guess, than cold water, but hopefully you're going to have it inside where it's not going to make that much of a difference. All right, if you're going to use a tray like this and not the cells, this is the way I do my onions for the most part. You can, once you moisten your media, you can just take a straight edge of some sort and make little rows. When you plant your seed, you're going to plant it no more than about 3 times the width of the seed. So just keep that in mind of how deep you make those furrows, and then you're just going to drop your seeds in the furrow and cover them up. It's pretty easy to do, and then you water it in. When you start selecting your seeds, just be sure not to overdo it, because you can end up having all these seeds and no place to put them. So, if you're starting out, start small. Don't go crazy. Real easy plants to grow are going to be marigold, zinnias, sunflowers, as far as flowers go. Peppers and tomatoes are very easy to start. Even some of the cucurbits like squash or cucumbers, those all work fine. And the better seed companies will have, and I do like Johnny's seed quite a bit, but they're going to have several things on here. They're going to have the name of the plant, which is basil. Now, in this case, it's a downy mildew resistant basil. which is good because we have downy mildew problems now with basil. It's going to have the cultivar. So whatever the name of that cultivated variety is, in this case, it's Rutgers Devotion DMR. The DMR obviously is downy mildew resistant. It'll have a lot number. They all, again, the better ones come with lot numbers. It's going to have the days to maturity. In this case, it's 74 days. And then it's going to have your germination test and date. This is, to me, very important because say seedless watermelon, for example, they might have a germination rate of 50 to 60%, and that's good. But other plants may have, like this one, 99, 98%. If you're going to do these in the cell packs, I mean, your job is just to try to get one seed per cell because 99% of them are going to come up. You're not going to waste any seed that way. And it's also going to have the date of that test. So if you get a seed packet and the date was several years ago, that's old seed and you might not have the same germination rate. So just keep those things in mind. I've already talked a little bit about this, but when you plant your seed, you want to do it 2 to 3 times the width of that seed. I do want to caution some of you that may want to do something like lettuce and some of these other flowers. They do need, these plants in particular, for seeds, they need light to germinate. So if you were to make that furrow and drop lettuce seeds in the furrow and then cover them up, like shown in the last picture or a couple slides back, your germination rate would be very, very poor. So you want to be sure that you're, like for lettuce, a lot of times we just want to scatter that on top of some media and be done with it, and just water it in a little bit because they need that light to germinate. I think another important step is to be sure that you have, you do include plant labels. You will forget what you plant. So I like to put the name of the plant, the cultivar, especially if I've got several cultivars, and the date that I seeded it. When you're watering your seeds, you do not want to use, I tend to not want to use my regular watering can simply because you can the water that comes out of the can will sometimes just flush the seed right out of your container. So I try to use something like a spray bottle. That to me is sufficient. I also have these little things that I screw on top of a water bottle that can kind of drip out some water as well. So just try not to water too hard is the main point. And then again, once you water those seeds in, you want to make sure that it stays moist until you have germination. This heating mats are very nice if you do want to spend a few extra dollars and get some. Most seeds, even things like onions and cabbage, that when the plant goes out, they really like cool conditions. As a seedling or as a seed, they can germinate under warm conditions. And this just makes seeds pop out of the media very, very quickly. So I don't think it's a bad idea, but if you do use a mat, sometimes you have to monitor those moisture levels a little bit more, but they work great. All right, damping off is a Pythium disease that happens to seedlings, and this is exactly what you'll see. You'll just see them flop over. Mainly it's because that you're watering too much. You're keeping that seedling a little bit too moist, and they'll just flop over right at the soil line. So try to, maybe introduce a fan at this point, just a little bit of air movement, but also be sure not to use old media that had that problem last year. If you use old media and don't cook it in the oven to sterilize it, you may end up with this problem again. I used to use a south-facing window to start my seeds, but as you can tell on the bottom two, especially the bottom two pictures, they lean so much toward that light that you end up getting spindly, thin, flopped seedlings. And that is not the type of seedling that you want to go outside. The seedling you want is a short, stocky, tough little seedling that's going to be able to withstand conditions outside. So in this case, we really encourage people to use any kind of light, whether it be fluorescent or LEDs. Fluorescent bulbs do work fine. They provide all the light wavelengths. Sometimes there's warm and cool that have wavelengths that are more provide the wavelengths of light that the plants need, but just cheap old fluorescent bulbs work fine. For the best results with this, you really want to keep the canopy of your seedlings only an inch or two from the light. So if you have these, you need a way to move the plants up or down, or move the light up or down. So one way or the other, you got to be able to move them so that the canopy stays very close to these bulbs. Fluorescents do not heat up, so that's nice. LEDs, yeah, they do cost a little bit more, and overall their energy costs are much lower, and they are going to last a little longer. But in some cases, you can position your plants quite a bit further from this light. And with some of these, you just have to figure it out on your own. But there's a lot of these LEDs that are can emit lights just for the plants, and so that's very, very handy. And some way to stack them is always great. Just as a point of reference, I made a three-tiered plant stand with 3 fluorescent lights and the extension cord that was needed, and that cost me about $200 plus a timer, which we'll talk about next. It's going to be really handy for you to have a timer. The light does not have to stay on all the time. We recommend 8 to 10 hours a day, and that's it. Timers are great. You set it and you walk away, except you do have to keep watering your plants. When your seedlings come up and they have their first true leaves, this is when we think about fertilizing. And what is a true leaf? Well, let's take a look here. Okay, so the very first 2 leaves that come out are called cotyledons. They're what we call seed leaves, and these little cotyledons provide food for the developing seedling. And then you have these true leaves that come out next, and sometimes the true leaves can look quite a bit different than the cotyledons. They usually look more like the plant that you know. So that's what we're looking for. Once you have some true leaves, then you can start putting on fertilizer at about half a rate. You have to remember these plants are they're very small. They're this big, so you want to be sure to just give them a little bit of bump with some fertilizer, and be sure that when you're watering that you're leaching it through so that any fertilizer that you do put on there gets leached out. Okay, we talked a little bit about light. Just to reiterate, just be sure that you're sowing them and covering them up if it's okay to. If they need light, you need to be sure that you're spreading the seed on top of the media and then lightly watering it in. All right. The very last thing we want to consider is hardening off those transplants. And hardening off is just a process that helps the plants acclimate to the conditions that are going to be outside. And usually, if you take them out for a couple hours a day and kind of keep increasing that time outside, don't put them in bright sunlight. Put them underneath a tree or someplace they're protected from really, really bright sunlight, because they can burn. But just keep increasing that for maybe take a week to harden them off before they go outside. And if you have any questions about anything that you've seen today, you can contact me at the Extension office. You can contact me on Facebook or Twitter or on Instagram. Thanks for watching.